Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time it is a review of the 2015 drama, The Stanford Prison Experiment. They were given 2 weeks. It lasted 6 days. Now, The Stanford Prison Experiment is one of those based on true events films, and unlike most of them, this is one of those movies that is very close to the source material. There are a couple things that are thrown into the script that didn't necessarily happen in the real experiment, but for the most part, everything is as detailed and as accurate as it possibly can be. A big reason for this is the man behind the whole experiment, Dr. Philip Zimbardo. He was actually heavily involved with the production of this film, as well as the earlier version of the movie, which I might have had the same script by Tim Talbot, who's the writer of this film, and it was first announced in 2002. Producer Brent Emery signed Tim Talbot to write the film. There were some problems that happened. They couldn't really get financing. Then there was the writer's strike in 2007. Then there were these other movies that were loosely based on the prison experiment, like The Experiment, the foreign film, which a lot of people, when they think of this movie, they erroneously look at it and be like, oh, this is a ripoff of Der Experiment or The Experiment. And it's like, no, it isn't. It's not a ripoff at all. This is actually based on the actual experiment that happened at Stanford University in 1971. Those are works of fiction that are loosely inspired by the actual experiment. But, people are like that. They just don't want to, do their research. They just want to have knee-jerk reactions on the internet. That's just a normal thing. But, anyway, the film also was going to be made later on, in 2009. Producer Christopher McQuarrie was supposed to do it through a company called Imprint Entertainment, which used to be called Maverick Films. But then Maverick Films had a breakup with ownerships, and then they started a new spin-off of the production company called Imprint. But then really nothing happened from it until August of 2014, when Sandbar Pictures and Abandon Pictures, they came on board to finance the film. And then it was released at Sundance in 2015, and it was released on DVD and Blu-ray by IFC Films. And this is a film that I'd heard of. I had seen the trailer for. It looked interesting. I knew of the case. I knew of the experiment, but I did not know all the details. And I actually didn't know all the details until I watched this film, and then I did more research after I saw it, which just made the film all the more compelling and all the more interesting, because I didn't know everything beforehand. And I highly recommend, if you don't know all the details about this case, don't look it up. Don't try to catch up on it by watching a documentary or anything on the Stanford Prison Experiment. Just watch this film, and then afterward go on and do some more research and watch the documentary on the experiments and read up on some more things about it, because it does make for a much more compelling film and a much more compelling experience, because it's like seeing all this stuff unfold for the first time. And especially if you don't know all the details, it really does grab you. And even if you do, the film is so well put together for such a low budget, for a film that was only shot in 21 days, and so well acted by everyone involved, that it's still worth it, despite the fact that you know how everything is going to unfold. This is a film that I probably wouldn't watch over and over again due to its intense subject matter, due to how really harrowing and intense and disturbing it is. But it is a film that I would break out maybe every other year, or, maybe once a year if I'm in the mood for, because it is easily one of the best films of 2015, and one of the better films of its type that I've seen in the past few years or so. Like, this one flew really under the radar when it came out. It premiered at Sundance. It had some good reviews from critics, but it didn't really get a wide theatrical release, and it didn't really do much of anything. And it seems like a film that not very many people talk about nowadays. And I really think it's too bad, because I think this is a gem. This is a really underrated, excellent drama with some equally excellent performances and work by the cast and the crew. Kyle Patrick Alvarez, I thought his direction in this was great. I thought he really did a really good job with his low budget. He still had a lot of different shots in this that felt cinematic and felt like they were from a bigger budgeted film. You could definitely tell that he had passion for the story, and it was something that he wanted to bring to life as accurately and as effectively as possible. The whole film has this dark and dingy look to it. It looks like it has grit embedded right into the film, and that's for a very good reason, because it is in a lot of ways a very gritty, just dark film, because it deals with dark subject matter. It deals with psychological torture, to be honest. That's really what this whole experiment was. For those of you who might not know exactly what the experiment is, I'll spoil it for you. In 1971, Dr. Philip Zimbardo had 24 students at Stanford University agree to be volunteers for an experiment where he would set up a wing of the college as if it were a prison. And he would randomly select from this group of 24 student volunteers students who would be prisoners and students who would be guards. And the whole point was to see what the psychological effects are on prisoners and guards based on the prison environment. Essentially a way to test human nature, a way to test what humans do with ultimate power, or when they have power at their disposal, what happens to people who are prisoners, what happens to their mental faculties, what happens to their psyche, and vice versa. Like I said in the beginning with the tagline, they were only given 2 weeks, and the experiment only lasted 6 days. So that says a lot, because it got quickly out of hand, and things just went way, way out of control. Things just went to the darkest depths of the human psyche and nature, and it was so scary and so terrifying that Zimbardo himself just pulled the plug, because he was like, I don't need to see anymore. It's not going to, it's not worth it. This is inhumane, and this is crazy. So, this is a film that is not listed as a horror film, but in a lot of ways it could be. To me personally, psychological horror, when it's done right, is some of the most effective horror there is. Because it's real horror. Like, this is real, true to life horror. They're messing with your mind. And that's the kind of shit that really sticks with you. Like, it's shocking. It's a shocking film, because you still can't believe this is based on a true story. You're like, this didn't actually happen, but it did. It did. 100% it happened. Other than maybe a couple things that were creative liberty, so to speak, by the writer, 98% of the things in this movie actually happened in real life. And that's scary. So, yeah, Kyle Patrick Alvarez, I can't sing his praises enough. Also, this is a guy who didn't have a whole lot of directorial experience with feature films before this. Did some short films and stuff like that. So that makes his directing this all the more impressive. The writing by Tim Talbot I thought was wonderful. I thought he did a terrific job adapting this true story to film in terms of managing to do what was really a very difficult thing to do. Take all 24 of these students and give them enough characterization and enough personality and enough something to them to make them compelling and interesting characters. That's no small feat. Also, making Dr. Philip Zimbardo not only a character who seems like he's a little bit too invested in his work, a character who might seem one-dimensional in terms of the fact that he's just obsessed, but the script decided to, hey, we're not going to just paint him as some obsessed psychologist who doesn't really care about people. We're actually going to show him come to grips with the reality of what his experiment represents and why he should stop it. I like that aspect of it. It gives him a arc. And there's different arcs for different characters throughout the film as well. So it's just a film that has a really great script in terms of how all these different characters are intertwined together and how the different days of the experiment go by, and the dialogue is really well done. There's a few moments here and there where it does try to liven the mood a little bit, add some levity, which helps, but it doesn't ever not take it seriously, which when you look at some of the things, I mean, they're wearing like pantyhose on their heads, the prisoners, and they're wearing what essentially is a smock or a dress. You would think that, oh, that's just silly and stupid and laughable, but the film manages to make it work because that's actually what these students wore. That's actually what they were given to wear in this experiment. But I definitely do feel that despite all of the great elements when it comes to the direction and the writing, the film would be nowhere near as memorable or nowhere near as efficient without the cast. I mean, this is a really phenomenal cast. You got Billy Crudup, who delivers one of his best acting roles as Zimbardo. He totally fell right into this character, right into this person, embodied everything that was Zimbardo, and it was just a really captivating performance. I'm surprised he wasn't nominated for an Oscar. That's how good he was in this role. Michael Angarano was also equally as compelling, but in a different way. He played Christopher Archer, who was one of the students who was chosen to be a guard. And he started to develop this split personality of this John Wayne guard, where he would just push the envelope in just various obscene and insane ways because he was given the ability to do so. And this actor just knocked it out of the park. I mean, you hated this guy, but that's the point. You're supposed to hate this guy. And then you were also terrified of this guy because you're like, what kind of person goes and falls into this role so easily and so quickly, and then is so and at the same time is so easily able to step out of it once the experiment is over? Before he goes into the prison and he's getting ready to be a guard, he's ready for his guard shift, he's talking all normal, he's acting like a normal college age, 20 or something year old student, and then when he gets the guard uniform and he's on duty, he's a fucking psycho. Like, these are the type of people that, like, they might be sociopaths. They might be more dangerous than they seem. Because that's the only explanation I can come up with someone who can step so easily in and out of a role like that. It's not just acting. because the guy falls way too much into it. You also have other younger actors like Moises Arias, who you might recognize from Disney Channel shows and stuff like that. I think he was in Hannah Montana. Nicholas Braun, Keir Gilchrist, Thomas Mann, Ezra Miller, and Logan Miller, who I believe they were in Scout's Guide for the Zombie Apocalypse. Really like them in that as well. And Tye Sheridan. Ezra Miller was really good in this. I'm not really a big fan of Ezra Miller. I thought he was terrible in a lot of things that I've seen him in. I guess he did the best he could with the role he was given in Trainwreck, but he was awful as the Flash in Justice League, so I was just really leery about him being in the cast, but he was great. All these young actors, they did their jobs really, really well. I was very impressed with them. Even Olivia Thirlby, who had a little bit of a role as in a way, I think she's kind of a love interest for Dr. Zimbardo, but not really. Apparently, my cat wants to speak up about the movie now. Apparently, he wants to say hi. But anyway, yeah, she did a good job too. This is a really great cast, and her character really played a big part in bringing Zimbardo back to reality, because he was off in Fantasyland for a little bit, just getting way too invested in his work to the point where he's just ignoring just all of this, just kind of almost human rights violations, and he's just ignoring the psychological torture that's happening under his watch. All for the sake of science, all for the sake of this experiment. The score by Andrew Hewitt was also fine. It's nothing particularly memorable, but this is one of those movies that was trying to have like some memorable score. It sets the mood well and adds to the atmosphere just enough. It's not something I listen to over and over again, but it's nothing that's terrible or anything like that. Cinematography by Josh Shelton, I thought was solid. Did a good job bringing out the darker, grittier aspects of the not only the time period of the early 70s. I also want to make a point about that. I thought the costume design and production design was really good in terms of recreating the look and feel of the early 70s, whether it's with the clothes that people were wearing or their hairstyles or the overall art direction, of the university and other people's locales. Yeah, I thought just did a really nice job recreating that on a low budget. You could tell that they wanted to make it look like the time period, that they weren't trying to like half-ass it like some other productions might have done. The editing by Fernando Collins I thought was quite good as well. This is a movie that's fairly lengthy. It's 122 minutes, but I never really felt like something needed to be cut out, because it's all there to build character or to show how things devolve when it comes to this experiment, how things get increasingly more and more insane as it goes on. I'm not going to reveal the intricacies or the details, because I want you to see the film for yourself, because it's the kind of stuff that just needs to be seen for you to believe it. I don't want to have it lose any potential power by giving it away. So, but I'll definitely let you know, it definitely escalates. And it gets pretty fucking nuts. So, yeah, going back to the editing, like I said, there's really not a whole lot of stuff that needed to be cut out of the film, because I thought the film was actually pretty well paced for a movie that's 122 minutes. It goes by at a decent enough pace. It's a slow burn, but that's how the experiment was, so I'm not gonna really complain about that. It's just one of those movies that is really held up by a great script, great direction, and great acting, and a very compelling enthralling, engaging story that really does keep you gripped to the screen from pretty much the moment the experiment begins, because it's just one of those rides, essentially. You're just kind of just you're sitting there and you're uncomfortable, but you want to see what happens next, and you are really compelled to see how things wind up. So, and that's a sign of a great film, really. I would say there's a review by a quote by Justin Gerber from Consequence of Sound that sums up the film great. So disturbing, intense, and believable that it's easy to forget we're watching a movie. Yeah, I really did get that invested in the story. It did such a good job throwing me into this insanity that it did feel like I was there, and it was something that I couldn't look away from. And it's something that still sticks with me because of the reality of it. This happened. These students were psychologically tortured, and this was actually something that was funded by not only the university but our military. That I think the Navy and the Army threw in some money to this experiment to try to see what would happen. Um, yeah, it was one of those things. Yeah, the U.S. Navy and the Marine Corps um, were very interested in it because they were trying to see what causes the conflict between military guards and prisoners. So they wanted to see for themselves what is it that causes this conflict, and the answer is a combination of two things. If you ask me, it's a combination of power. They're given power over the prisoners. Some abuse that, and the other is just people's inner nature that just gets brought out by this particular environment. Anyway, yeah, I don't know what else to say about the Stanford Prison Experiment except if I were to rate it out of 5 stars. I really don't have any problems with it. I honestly did not find anything wrong with the movie. For what it was, what it was trying to do, it excelled at what it was trying to accomplish. So I'm giving it 5 stars. I know some people might think that's a bit high, but that's this is my opinion, and I'm sticking to it because I really didn't find anything wrong with the movie. Anyway, thank you for watching my review, and as always, I will see you later. See ya.